Time for some more of The Case of the Rock and Roll Dog. Uh-oh, I didn't mark my place. Chapter 3. So when we stopped, Hooligan had grabbed a marker, 3 markers, and run off with them, and they had to try to get it back. So they told him to play fetch, and he fetched something, and they got some of the markers back. Chapter 3. Besides being my best friend, Courtney is also my worst enemy. Maybe you know what I mean. If you don't, I will explain. A best friend and worst enemy is a person you can't live without because you have known her so long, and it's a person you can't live with because she annoys you so much. Courtney has been my best friend since we were 3 years old in preschool. That's when Mom was elected to be a senator from California and we moved to Washington, D.C. Back when Mom was a plain senator, Courtney's dad didn't write about her much, but now he writes about her a lot. This is a problem. And there's another one besides. I can tell sometimes Courtney feels jealous about how I live in the White House. She doesn't get that it's not all wonderful. I mean, there are good parts, like riding in the helicopter, and I don't have to do chores like washing dishes, but we fold our own clothes and make our own beds because Granny doesn't want us to think we're some kind of special. Our other chore is taking care of Hooligan. We feed him and take turns cleaning out his dog bed, sweeping the basket and the cushion, shaking out the blanket, spraying away doggy smell. This is a pretty gross job though, and sometimes by mistake we both forget. Even the good parts of life in the White House come with problems, like with the Song Boys. I couldn't wait for their concert, but I was also worried about Courtney. She was going to be so mad if she wasn't invited. Then on Tuesday, I found out I should have been even more worried. By the time I got to school, everyone in my class knew about the Song Boys were coming. And guess what? They expected to be invited too. I told Granny after school and she said, "There's only one thing to do. Talk to Aunt Jen." Granny is Aunt Jen's mom, but even Granny is a little afraid of her. It's not that Aunt Jen is mean, it's just that she's not exactly cozy. Aunt Jen's office is in the East Wing. Nate and Tessa and I are allowed to go anywhere in the family part of the White House by ourselves. But if we want to go to the office part, someone has to come with us. Today it was Charlotte. She is my favorite Secret Service agent. To get to the East Wing, you go down 2 floors and then through a long hallway past a fancy library and a real movie theater with red velvet seats and paintings of first ladies from a long time ago. The best one is named Mamie Eisenhower. She has bangs and a kind smile. She is wearing a beautiful light pink dress. While we walked, I told Charlotte why I had to see Aunt Jen. "I feel your pain, kid," she said. "My friends ask me for White House favors too." "What favors?" I asked. She grinned. "Well, one of my nieces wanted a signed picture of you and Tessa, just for example." "I could probably have a picture someplace," I said. Charlotte shook her head. "You know your family's not into that, Cameron. They want you to act like kids, not movie stars." Here we are. Aunt Jen's secretary, Mrs. Crow, smiled and said we could go right in. In Aunt Jen's office, I explained, and she sighed. "How many people do you want to invite?" she asked. I looked at my shoes. "Oh dear," she said. "Your whole class?" I nodded. "Including Courtney Lozana?" "Especially Courtney Lozana," I said. Aunt Jen shook her head. "It's awfully tight for security clearances," she said. "But I'll talk to Mrs. Silver and we'll see what we can do." Mrs. Silver is the White House social secretary. She works for my aunt and her job is planning parties and events like the Song Boys. I told Aunt Jen thank you, and I would have given her a hug, but she doesn't like to get wrinkled. You're welcome, she said. Then as I was walking out the door, she asked me to hold on a minute. Just do me one favor, Cameron. We'll let the class know all at once, and as soon as we can. In the meantime, please don't pester me about it. Do we have a deal? We have a deal, I said. Going back upstairs, I heard music from the state floor. Not random music either, a song I totally knew by heart. Shake It Up, from the Song Boys' second album. I felt a thump in my chest. Were the Song Boys here already? Not yet, kid, Charlotte said. That's the Marine Band. They're going to play with the boys on Saturday. Usually they'd rehearse at the barracks, but today they're trying out sound equipment. When we got back upstairs, Granny, Nate, and Tessa were in the west sitting hall. So was Hooligan, in his bed. When he saw me, he raised his head and thumped his tail, but he didn't get up. Hooligan's had a busy day, Granny said. Who did he knock over this time? Nate asked. Very funny, said Granny. And no one, I hope. But he did go AWOL for a while. Even from up here, we could hear the music. Granny had already explained to Tessa and Nate about the band. Tessa tugged on Granny's sleeve. Can we go watch? Granny considered. How much homework do you have? Tessa and I answered together. Hardly any. Nate said, Cameron should study spelling. My turn to stick my tongue out, and luckily Granny didn't see. She had closed her eyes to listen to the music, and next thing you know, she was rocking out. Tessa and I high-fived and rocked out too. Nate just stood there like a lump. Still bouncing, Granny said, It's catchy. Tell you what, we'll all go downstairs and listen. Nate crossed his arms. Not me. Chapter 4. 5 minutes later, we were standing in the East Room. Granny, Tessa, me, and Nate. He should know it's no use arguing with Granny. The East Room is on the state floor. It's as big as a basketball court. The biggest room in the White House. It's gold and white with 3 giant sparkling chandeliers and 4 fireplaces. Sometimes, like now, when there's going to be an event, it's mostly empty of furniture. Once a long time ago, a kid named Amy Carter lived in the White House, and she even got to roller skate in the East Room. When we walked in, the musicians were between songs. Colonel Michaels, the director, looked up and saw us. Good afternoon, children. Good afternoon, Judge McLaren. Granny is Granny to us, but she used to be a judge in California, and before that, a police officer. Good afternoon, Colonel Michaels, said Granny. We've come to listen, if you don't mind. Happy to have you. Colonel Michaels turned to face the band and raised his hands. But then he dropped them and looked around. A trumpet player held up a smooth, shiny wooden stick and handed it to Colonel Michaels. That's it, Nate whispered to me. The Sousa baton. It doesn't look that special, Tessa said. It's historic, Nate said. Colonel Michaels raised the baton and smiled. I can't very well direct without this, can I? Nate nudged me. See? Then the musicians raised their instruments and a 1, and a 2, and a 1, 2, 3, 4. The trumpets blared the first notes of another big Song Boys hit, Praise a Ruckus. The band's official name is the President's Own Marine Band. It has 160 members, men and women, but most of the time they don't all play together. For the Song Boys, it was going to be their chamber orchestra, along with guitars and a drum set. This was a rehearsal, so the musicians wore plain brown uniforms and shiny black shoes. I will never get to roller skate in the East Room, but Granny does believe in dancing. She, Tessa, and I formed a conga line when Hooligan showed up in the doorway. Where did he come from anyway? Of course, he should have been on a leash, but we were having too much fun to go upstairs and get it. Tessa even grabbed his front paws so the two of them could dance together. The musicians took a short break, and then they played Hooligan's favorite, Rock and Roll Dog. How could he help but howl? Granny looked at me and raised her eyebrows, the universal sign for, "Control your dog, Cameron." I bent down and lifted Hooligan's ear. Shh! Unfortunately, Hooligan misunderstood. He thought I said, "Party!" because he tensed his muscles, blinked twice, and did the frenzy. Lunged, thumped, sprang, and spun. Back on the ground for an instant, he looked left, he looked right, and took off like he had a squirrel to catch. Next thing we knew, he was bounding toward the band and yipping in time with the music. At first, I thought everything would be all right. In fact, the way the Marines stepped and sidestepped to avoid him looked like MTV. But then, Hooligan's too-long tail brushed a music stand that hit the one next to it, and the next, and the next, and then the cymbals on the drum set. The clatter was so terrible it even scared Hooligan, who jumped like he'd heard a starter's pistol. Next thing you know, people were running in from every direction to see what was the matter. Mr. Ross, the head usher, Mr. Bainey, the florist, Mr. Patel, the handsome steward, a maid named Mrs. Hedges, and Mr. Kane, one of the chefs. Mr. Ross is from Texas, and when he saw our rampaging dog, he must have thought of a rampaging cow because he hollered, "Round up!" Unfortunately, Hooligan is quicker than any cow, and anyway, we didn't have lassos. 3 times we had him surrounded, and 3 times he busted free. That's when Granny's police training kicked in. "Tessa," she ordered, "you go right. Cameron, take the door, and Nathan, you've got my back." As we scurried to position ourselves, Granny strode into the path of the oncoming Hooligan, raised her right hand, and said, "Halt!" Face to face with Granny, even a getaway car would stop. But not my wild and crazy dog. He scooted by on her right and almost took out Nate. That left me as the last defender between Hooligan and escape. Have I mentioned the state floor of the White House is full of rare, historic, and breakable antiques? Hooligan was poised to take a mighty leap across the East Room threshold when I hurled my body forward and crash! We collided. Then, ow! I hit the floor hard. So did my dog. After all the clattering, yelling, and stomping, the room went suddenly still. Then in the silence I heard Tessa's voice. "Puppy! Poor puppy! Are you okay?" And Colonel Michaels said, "I think that will conclude today's rehearsal." Chapter 5. Let's see if it's short. It is. It's amazing how much damage one too-large dog can do, even in a room that's mostly empty. The next few minutes were a whirlwind of activity as the staff tried to put the East Room back in order and the band packed up. I sat with Tessa in the middle of it all, holding Hooligan firmly by the collar. "Judge McLaren, you don't have to help," Mr. Ross told Granny. She was on her knees, tugging the corner of a rug to flatten it out. "Oh, yes, I do." She explained she felt responsible because she should have insisted on getting Hooligan's leash. Finally, the band was ready to leave, and Granny said, "I'll take the dog, girls. You go and apologize to Colonel Michaels." "What about Nate?" Tessa asked. Granny looked around. "I don't know where he got to, but it doesn't matter. Hooligan is your dog." Colonel Michaels is tall and serious, with perfect posture and a spotless uniform. Even though Tessa is only 7, I was glad she was standing next to me. I wouldn't have wanted to apologize alone. "We're sorry about Hooligan," I said. "He has too much energy," Tessa said. "And it was his favorite song," I said. "This is Hooligan's home, not ours," Colonel Michaels said, "but I do wish we'd been able to complete the rehearsal." He looked at his watch. "And now I'm afraid we're running late. See you on Saturday?" "Yes, sir," we said at the same time. "I look forward to it," said Colonel Michaels. "Cammy," Tessa said a minute later when we were walking up the stairs, "he didn't exactly forgive us, did he?" "Not exactly," I said. Upstairs, Hooligan flopped onto his bed and fell instantly asleep. Then Nate appeared from the kitchen. "Where did you go?" Granny asked him. "Who, me?" Nate said. "No place. I came back up here is all." Granny cocked her head. Then she looked at Tessa and me. "You still have some time before dinner. I think all three of you had better set yourselves down and do some schoolwork." "Mine would be done, except I had to listen to stupid music," Nate said. Granny shut her eyes. "It will be in your best interest, Nathan, if I pretend I did not hear that last comment." "Besides, I saw you tapping your feet," Tessa said. "You just don't want to admit you like the Song Boys because you think they're for kids. Well, you're a kid. Get over it." Nate crossed his arms. "I hate the Song Boys," he said. "And you know what else? I hope something bad happens and they can't even play on Saturday." Granny put her hands on her hips. "That is too much, Nathan. Apologize to your cousins." "Sorry, cousins," Nate said, but in a robot voice so we would know he didn't mean it. There are 11 bedrooms in the White House. Plenty to go around, but Tessa and I still share. We were afraid it would be spooky to sleep alone in an old house. Our room is big, with 2 beds and 2 bookcases. My bookcase is full of books. Tessa's is full of Barbies. That night, it was Mom who came in to say goodnight. Usually we eat dinner with Granny because Mom is so busy being president. When she's in town, though, Mom always comes in to kiss us goodnight. "I understand there was some uproar with Hooligan today." Mom was sitting on the edge of Tessa's bed. She wore gray sweats and a gray Stanford sweatshirt. "In our family, it's Tessa and Aunt Jen who are into fashion. Mom and me, not so much." "Hooligan is not the problem," Tessa told her. "Nate is the problem." "Why do we have to live with him, Mom?" I asked. "Shall I send him back to San Diego?" Mom asked. "Yes!" Tessa and I said. "What about Aunt Jen?" Mom said. "She can stay," I said. "Then who will Nate live with in San Diego?" Mom asked. This was the problem. Aunt Jen's husband died in a war. It was later she adopted Nate. He was born in Korea. "Doesn't he have friends in San Diego?" I asked. Mom nodded. "That's an idea. Or what about this? You girls could go live with friends, and Nate can stay here." Tessa knew Mom didn't mean it, but she likes to be dramatic. "No!" She waved her hands. "We want to live with you, with our family." Mom smiled and gave her a kiss and a snuggle. Then she came over and gave me a kiss and a snuggle. Mom smelled like roses. "You know what, Muffins?" she said. "I bet Nate feels the same way. I bet he wants to live with his family." I was going to answer her, but I was sleepy. And when I'm sleepy, my mom is too smart for me. Ready for chapter 6, but we're going to stop there for today.